The best advice that I could give would be to invite AI to your workflow 5 or 10 minutes a day, every single day. I don't think once a week's enough. I think every day, treat it like play and treat it like an experiment and say, I wonder if I asked Claude or ChatGPT to do this. Like, I've been pleasantly surprised in what it can do in my own work. And that's been my experience in working with others. And when you look at the neuroscience behind that, right, there's a little dopamine hit. It feels kind of good. It's like, which encourages behavior to do more of it. And I think that 5 or 10 minutes, one, that adds up over time, but that will turn into a lot more than 5 or 10 minutes, I think, every day. I think people get really stuck on like, what's the use case? What is the thing that it's good at? And Connor Grennan, who did the AI Mindsets course, like people get stuck in the use case trap. My advice is there's an infinite amount of use cases. It's like, well, what are you working on? What's on your to-do list, your checklist right now? Do that.
Welcome to the Conversations on Applied AI podcast, where Justin Grammans and the team at Emerging Technologies North talk with experts in the fields of artificial intelligence and deep learning. In each episode, we cut through the hype and dive into how these technologies are being applied to real-world problems today. We hope that you find this episode educational and applicable to your industry, and connect with us to learn more about our organization at appliedai.mn. Enjoy.
Welcome, everyone, to the Conversations on Applied AI podcast. Today, we're talking with Tyler Moberg. Tyler is the founder and owner of Amplified Impact Solutions, where he helps leaders and teams actually use AI in their everyday work. He's trained more than 10,000 professionals since 2024, from Fortune 500 companies to nonprofits, educators to engineers, HR to finance. Prior to his own business, he was an instructional coach at Edina Public Schools and a training consultant at the Bob Pike Group. Tyler also both sponsored and presented at our Applied AI conference this past fall. So I want to personally thank him for giving back and supporting the Applied AI community. So thank you, Tyler, so much for being on our podcast today.
Thank you, Justin. It was an honor to be able to sponsor it. I see the way you lead, and I love your vision for Applied AI of just like, let's bring people together, let's collaborate, let's learn. I just think that's an amazing opportunity for people to connect and Yeah, awesome. And like I say, it takes a community, and I just love bringing people together and seeing what happens. And so awesome that we had a chance to spend some time here, have you on the show, and talk a little bit about your perspectives and your angles on how you're using AI and working with folks, because it's such a hot topic these days. But, I mentioned having your own business. Sounds like you've been doing this out on your own for the past couple of years or so, which is awesome. You've been training a lot of professionals. But how did you get to where you're at today? Yeah, it really doesn't make a lot of sense when you think about it, right? Where I started as a middle school science teacher. I spent about 13 years just in the classroom teaching middle school science, loved it. I never thought I'd be doing anything besides that. And then got an invitation to join our school leadership team, and really reluctantly was like, I don't know if this is for me. Got a taste for that and got mentored and realized that it's something that I really enjoyed. And then grew my confidence, really honestly, to work with adults. And had a friend of mine who worked for the Bob Pike Group. We kind of hit it off. We were talking all about what the Bob Pike Group does. And then he invited me to apply. They had an opening, and I joined this Bob Pike Group, a corporate training organization, and spent a couple of years traveling around the country, consulting and training and working with organizations on one of my biggest passions, which is how do you deliver good training so that people actually learn? They walk out of the room retaining, remembering, and being able to use what you teach. I love that work. And in that work, I started to use AI, started to teach a little bit how to use AI in that setting, and said, you know what, I love this. I kind of want to do more with it. And I just dug in, just all in with learning and experimenting. And I said, I'm going to start my own company called Amplified Impact, where I believe that AI has the ability to help us amplify our impact. That's really been my premise, is like, how do everyday professionals think differently with AI at their fingertips in their day-to-day things that they do? Like, it's not techie. That's the cool part, right, Justin? Is like, you don't have to be good at tech to be good at AI. It's just, there are new skill sets and mindsets that we're kind of honing in on and developing.
Did you always have the entrepreneur bug, sounds like?
No, not at all, actually. My brother always has, but not me. And never imagined in a million years that this is the path that I would be taking. I think I just kept saying yes to different things that came up and said, what do I have to lose? And then now it kind of morphed into this, and I haven't looked back. I started working with just teachers and educators in this work because I'm like, okay, that's something I know really well. And then People were like, oh, you know what? I have a spouse they're in marketing, or what about the leadership team? And then that's branched now into really I've worked with pretty much every single industry on AI training.
That's the thing that's so cool about AI is it touches everyone, no matter what industry, no matter whatever job role you're in. Just late last week, I was out at a City and Civil Engineering Society of Minnesota conference. And so, what do I know about civil engineering? There's not a whole lot that I know, but I can absolutely talk to them about how AI is going to change what they do, right? And how the entire industry is going to change. And that's everything from people that are managing civil engineering projects to people that are bidding on them to people that are doing them, everything across the board. So that's the thing that's so cool about this technology. Did you use AI to help you start your business in some ways?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. And that's the cool part, right? Everything that I teach, I use. And then for me, it's like playtime, right? Like all these new updates have been coming out lately. And I'm using them myself for my own business, but then that transfers into me being able to teach and help others use them as well. And yes, I'm a solopreneur, but I think I operate like I have 5 employees, right? Like I don't know how to draft contracts and proposals. I don't know how to market. And granted, I'm not doing a lot of marketing, but all of the different angles in running a business, like I have that instant thought partnership where I can collaborate with AI to help with those things.
So most people that listen to this podcast, as you know, the Applied AI community is super broad, right? You've got everything from individual founders to executives, people that are investors, engineers, what have you. When you go into these organizations, I guess maybe kind of walk me through sort of what is your story and what is your pitch and what would people that are listening to this podcast be interested in?
What I've experienced that I think's been interesting is that I've been to a lot of AI conferences and AI things, or getting trained from people who are really technically savvy and really know their stuff. The challenge has been that when you get a subject matter expert like that, they don't have a background in teaching and training and how to engage people. Like I said, my big passion is how do you engage people so they learn and they walk away with something meaningful. And so what I've combined and sort of married is like this research-based, neuroscience-based method to delivering a good training where people are not passively sitting and getting. They're actively engaged. They're actually using the tools. They're walking with takeaways that they're going to put on their desk and they're going to actually implement. That's what I think is so different about the way that I train. And that's the feedback that I continue to get has been, wow, this was actually fun. This was actually helpful in my day-to-day work, rather than maybe someone shared some really cool stuff that was very technical, but it wasn't practical or it didn't hit them in a way that it was retained.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was at this civil engineering conference I was talking about, and they actually had a keynote who talked about leadership. And then he had a smaller session, let me say, for an hour. It was so cool because instead of actually having a bunch of slides and going through this is leadership, he broke it down to real use cases. And he actually very interactive with the people that were in the audience. He would basically walk up to him and say, "Hey, Sue," and we all had name tags on. And then he would act it out. He actually acted out what a negative scenario would be, like how you would say things and then how you could flip it around and turn it the right way. So the idea of putting yourself actually physically in the seat and experiencing it was really good. Tell me a little bit more about how you get them to collaborate and work together.
First, before I jump into that, I want to say that keynote that you experienced, I never thought I'd be one to be giving keynotes, but I've given quite a few over the last year. And what I've learned is that you can deliver keynotes and large group trainings like you would a workshop. And when I think about that, I think to myself, okay, what are the objectives? What are they going to walk away and know and be able to do? When I think of a crash course, like a keynote that I've given a lot of times is empowering professionals with AI, practical tools and techniques for exceptional results. And in that session, people walk in the room and you can see where they're at with AI. There's a huge, maybe you've experienced this, some people come in and you just know they're anti-AI, or some of those ones that are passionate about it and they can't wait to ask you questions and talk to you about what they love. And then some people that are really experienced and some people that haven't opened up a chat yet. And so it's a really big challenge to walk into any given room, recognizing not only the range of experience, but the range of emotion that this topic brings up. One of the big things that I think I break down are the major misconceptions about AI. And there are a ton of misconceptions. And I'm curious to hear some of what you've experienced with those. But I already talked about one, and that is you don't need to be techie to be good at it. You just need to be a good communicator, right? Yeah, like you said, am I talking about prompting? Yes, I do teach in my framework that I've developed about prompting, but that's just one part to it. And I don't even like the word prompt engineering context engineering is the word I like. And really, it's about good communicating. You meet someone who's super highly capable. It's like, how can you effectively communicate what it is that you want? And if you can paint a vision, if you can paint a picture of here's what good looks like, or here's what I'm aiming for, you can get amazing results in just an average, everyday, one of the main AI tools and platforms, right? So that's a huge misconception is you need to be good at tech. Another big one is using AI for only low-level tasks, right? Like that's been a huge growth for me as I've evolved in the way that I use AI. Most people start in their emails, especially Copilot. You get that little button and it's like, oh, let me help craft it. And I'm actually, the more, I don't know about you, the more that I use AI, the more I'm kind of anti using AI to write emails or anti AI just to write. I feel like I still do use AI to write, but I use it by like voice dictating my thoughts and brain dumping and then keeping my voice and my ideas, but having them tightened, rearranged, and streamlined and improved with AI, right? I know I'm drilling into just one little example of a misconception, but what's fun is being able to identify some of these big mistakes that I share, and then having people be like, okay, yeah, I could see that. Oh, I am using it just to write emails, or I am only using it for low-level tasks. Why wouldn't I invite it to some high-level tasks, creative problem solving and brainstorming and the high-level stuff? And that's one part to it is let's just name them so we can move past them and not get stuck on these misconceptions. By the way, before I don't mean to interview you, but I'm always like, what's like a mistake or a misconception that you're finding out there?
It's evolving over time, but I think a lot of people are just worried about job safety, right? So the people that I feel are the most pessimistic. And again, you mentioned about like body language just tells you 100%. I can just tell people the way the expression on their face or the way that they're crossing their arms or whatever it is. Whenever I'm talking to somebody about this, it gives away a lot. But a lot of people are either on the side of, yeah, this thing's going to take my job, so I'm really worried about it. And almost from the standpoint of, I just want to bury my head in the sand and don't really care about it, to the other people that are basically like, I don't need this tool. I tried it once. I do a very specific type of job that AI can't touch. And I'm like, really? There isn't something in there that you could basically use it for? So sometimes it's both sides, opening people's eyes. And they say that, this is what Ethan Mollick said, right? That the AI you use today is the worst AI you'll ever use, right? Always going to get better. And so, oftentimes I'm talking to people who don't trust it or are a little bit worried by it. And it's convincing the room or whoever you're talking to that there's still a human element to what you do. There's always going to be that. So that's kind of a misconception, I guess. People sort of feel like the sky is falling sometimes.
There is a way to use it authentically. There really is. And my experience has been the people who are the most against it have had the least experience with using it and or using it in some of the right ways.
So there's a long tail on this. I think about when the internet came out and that people were like, what is this weird thing? And I started building websites in the mid-90s. And so at that time, it was just, we were making brochureware. We basically were going to companies that had paper ads, and we were basically replicating that paper ad and putting it on the internet in a digital form, right? How long it took the adoption to basically happen was just a long time. You went through dial-up, and then people started using the internet for all these other things. I was out with somebody. I'm like, who would have ever thought in the mid-90s that I would actually pull out an app on my phone and start my car? That was just so far out there. That isn't sort of the things that we were thinking about back then. And so bringing it fast forward to today, I feel like the way we're using AI right now is still those early days, right? We're having it draft emails for us. And the idea of having it be a thought partner, that's something that I think pretty much most people I talk to that haven't experienced it a lot don't really use it for that, right? I'm like, no. That is some of the most awesomest things about large language models. You can put it in the context of whoever you want it to act, and then you can start bouncing ideas off of it, right? And so that kind of blows people's minds. So I guess what I'm saying is I feel like we're still in obviously the early days, and there's so many use cases out there that I don't think anyone has thought of. And they're going to play out over the next couple of years here, but it's going to be a fun ride for sure.
Yeah, that language, thought partner, this book, Jeff Woods, The AI-Driven Leader, if anyone's looking for a good book on that, on AI. Have you read that one?
Yep.
Yeah. We're the thought leaders. AI is our thought partner, and I would add not our thought replacer. And if you are using AI and you're not happy with the results, my comment to you would be like, did you tell it what good looked like? Were you clear about that? Did you craft a good prompt? And this is an old study. I'm sure it's gotten better, but most people treat it like a search engine. Still, I think, at least people who are new. You saw that Google study a little while back. It was the average prompt is 7 to 9 words. People do it because that's what a good Google search is. And it looks a lot like a Google search bar, where an average good prompt is at least 21. There's a guy who I like. His name's Jeremy Utley, and he's big on using AI for creativity. And one of his strategies is doing a brain dump of 400 words. And truthfully, my prompting is because I use the dictate my prompts. I never type my prompts. That's like one of my top strategies that I couldn't recommend enough. I'm sure you do that. Are you using Whisperflow?
Just in ChatGPT, there's 2 ways to do it. I mean, one, of course, is just to do the voice mode. But even just on my keyboard, on my phone, I can just push the button and I'm basically just dictating. And so just build it all up. And then, So I don't even need any special tool. Most people don't even realize that most all keyboards and any phone, you just push the button and dictate to it.
You know how ChatGPT does your year-end report? I got one of my awards was like, my prompts were novels, like the longest prompter or whatever like that. Because I just here's all the context. Here's what I want. Just there could be typos. It can be scattered. Its ability to make sense of all that information is incredible.
Yeah. Well, I love the misconception you're talking about. You don't need to be a techie, because that's really what changed, I think, in 2022 with now these large language models got to a certain point where they all of a sudden can actually understand human language. And now we're writing software basically just by using the English language. Now we're generating pictures, all that sort of stuff. So it really brought that barrier entry down to literally anybody. Yeah,
if you can put it to words, you can make code, images, text, sound. As long as you can describe it, you can turn natural language into anything. That's it. I think it's so incredible.
Yeah.
In that crash course session, a lot of times I'll teach a framework that I developed. I've done a ton of learning about AI. I'm super passionate, as you can tell, maybe about learning, but I've seen a bunch of helpful insights, content, information out there that's really scattered. And yes, I've seen prompting frameworks. There are a ton of different prompting frameworks out there. Really, all of them can be just distilled down to good communication. But what I did was I developed a framework called the crafting framework that really zones in on the 5 skill sets and the 4 mindsets that I've distilled down as these are the most important things that I think people would want to know about AI in order to use it effectively and in a human-centered way. This is what I teach. It's really the framework for how I think about AI on a personal note, but then how I teach it and what I teach it through. And the 4 mindsets in it, I think that it might be good to just get an overview of those, are we want to craft communication with AI to get results that match our goals. That's really prompt engineering, prompt context engineering, right? Good communication. That's the CRAFT part of the framework. Those are the stems for here are some things that you might want to include. And then the other 3 mindsets are the parts that really make it human-centered. And that is the I of the framework is we want to interact collaboratively with AI as a capable yet imperfect thought partner. What that means to me is my conversations, my chats with AI are almost never a one and done. They're an ongoing conversation where I'm doing so much of the driving and steering in it through collaboration, not an answering machine. The end of the framework is narrow creatively with human expertise. The session I did for Applied AI was all about creativity and AI. And I'm actually very passionate about being creative with AI and I've experienced that it's way too easy to make way too much stuff with AI. And I've made that mistake a bunch myself. Hey, here's 600 prompts for you or, all these resources. But who cares if it's not getting used, right? The creativity comes into play when you're using your taste, judgment, and expertise to craft it, to shape it, to here's the most useful part and being able to apply the thing that you make in a way that it actually makes an impact. And then the G is ground critically and responsibly the inputs and outputs. So everything you put into AI, you're grounding it to say should I be putting this into the tool? Do I have permission to, or is it the right tool to put in that information? And then the output is, am I double checking it for accuracy? Am I making sure that it's not biased or that it represents what I want? Am I using it for good? This is my crash course, big picture of the framework that kind of is how I operate out of my own thinking and then teaching about it.
That's great. And I love the grounding aspect. Going back to some of the other misconceptions, right? Is that, and you see it on both sides, but some people just don't trust anything it outputs. And then others just totally trust whatever it outputs, right? So
Yeah.
it's like not having that human in the loop. So I'm really glad to hear that you have that grounding, I guess, phase, or would these be phases?
I've identified these as 4 mindsets.
Mindsets
Is what I've called them. Yeah. And they all kind of stem out of that letters crafting.
Crafting. Awesome, for sure. What's the typical size of group that you...
Oh man, it's ranged. Ideal is a different question, right? It's ranged from 15 or 20 people, or even as low as like an executive team of like 8 to 10, right? To 1,200 people in a giant auditorium. And so the group size impacts how responsive and customized you can be. But at least for this beginning part, what I've found is like, there's so much groundwork to address that like large groups or whole teams, whole organizations have been really good. But then from there, it's like, okay, we need to look at this through the lens of our marketing team and this specific group of people. Or you take these foundations and then you go and sit together and you workshop real challenges, or you build real agents or tools, right, that are going to actually help with a constraint or something that they're working on. So that's kind of been the flow like that I've been working through as I consult with organizations.
I've seen very similar things where you take this horizontal approach, getting them up to speed on how the tool works, what are some best techniques and best practices, what are some quick hits they could probably do. But then you got to start going deep on a specific workflow within an organization. Okay, marketing, this is how we use it. Sales, this is how we use it. With anything new, I think with people, they need to hear it in their own vocabulary. It needs to be words that they would use. And you start seeing the light bulbs go off.
That's actually the most fun part for me after everyone, because everyone comes in with at least a foundation, then you can hit the ground running. A couple of examples, like I was recently working with the city public works department, and there was a whole bunch of teams I rotated through, and one of them was the engineering department. They had 3 different giant documents that they were interacting with. One was like these old mandates, and then they had the new mandates, and then they had their city stuff. And it was like a bear for them to be able to like have to go and triangulate this content and information. And over the course of an hour and a half, we built this tool. It's a great tool, NotebookLM. It's such an amazing way to get more accurate comparisons of things because you know where the answers are coming from. It can cross-reference and things. And the engineer was like, you know what? We just saved like 80 hours right now in terms of like literally how this is what he had budgeted his time to be able to make these comparisons. And so that was really the example of one that was really fun. I'll give you one more example.
Yeah.
There was a relocating company, and they have their agents that work with people that they're helping to relocate. And they spend all this time on the phone with their clients, getting all this information. And then what they historically do is they need to go and type up a summary and send it off to the person and get all their stuff like summarized. That's an extremely great use case for AI, right? If you can take that raw transcript, that's all data that you can work with and interact with. With a few key leaders there, we built it in ChatGPT because I like the directions that it writes in the custom GPT builder. And then we just plop those into Copilot in Agent. But basically it, in their voice, will draft a summary with key ingredients so they can have consistency from team member to team member. But they were literally spending an hour and a half after every call doing this. And now, boom. And then they get to proof it. They get to make some adjustments. But it's like, that's a systems change that you can easily do. And it's not that hard. That's the thing. It's not that hard.
No, that's super fun, right? I kind of call it their aha moment. And usually when I go into a group, I'm like, who here has had their aha moment where it's like, holy crap, I can't believe it just did that. And so it can be everything from time savings to quality, of the output, where people are just like, their jaw hits the floor. And that's super fun when they're like, you just saved me 80 hours worth of work. That's amazing. Now I get a chance to do the other things that I like, the other parts of my job. Yep. As people are sort of getting into this space, I always like to ask people, maybe I'm a kid coming out of college, or maybe I'm a teacher already down in public schools, right? But I'm interested in AI, right? And I'm interested in, obviously, one path is to take your course and get up to speed on these types of things. But in general, like once they get out of here, what do you advise that they do?
Tell me if I'm wrong, Justin. Do you ever I feel overwhelmed sometimes with all the things, right? Oh my gosh, there were some crazy updates in the last couple of weeks, which I'm curious to take on.
Every day there's something new. Yeah.
There is, right? But like the challenge between feeling overwhelmed with everything out there, and the best advice that I could give would be to invite AI to your workflow 5 or 10 minutes a day, every single day. I don't think once a week's enough. I think every day, treat it like play and treat it like an experiment and say, I wonder if I asked Claude or ChatGPT to do this. For the most part, I've been pleasantly surprised in what it can do in my own work. And that's been my experience in working with others. And when you look at the neuroscience behind that, there's a little dopamine hit. It feels good. Which encourages behavior, right? To do more of it. And I think that 5 or 10 minutes, one, that adds up over time, but that will turn into a lot more than 5 or 10 minutes, I think, every day. I think people get really stuck on what's the use case? What is the thing that it's good at? And Connor Grennan, who did the AI Mindsets course, people get stuck in the use case trap. My advice is there's an infinite amount of use cases. It's like, well, what are you working on? What's on your to-do list, your checklist right now? Do that. That's a big piece of advice, I think. Complementing to that would be the more that you share what you're doing with others, the more you grow your own capacity, but you grow your team's capacity or your people in your community, right? Like that's the vision for Applied AI is let's come together and share. Because when you share it, it's really rewarding in a lot of ways, but also that's the best way to grow, right? The best way to learn is to teach and to give cultural change as well. I'll throw in another one, and that is you don't have to know all the tools. There are literally thousands. There's the big 6 that I've narrowed down. These are the big 6, right? It's ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot 365, Grok, and Perplexity. I use most of those because they all have signature strengths, but you don't need all 6. If you learn one of those tools really well, the skills that you grow in that one tool, they're going to transfer to all the way you interact with really any of them. I saw something out recently of the 2026 report. In 2026, with how good all these tools are getting, it's really less about the benchmarks because they're always going to be passing each other up. It's not necessarily about the best tool. It's about the best use case, right? And identifying creating workflows within that tool. So pick one tool and get to know it and explore it because grow to the other tools as well.
Yeah, for sure. Connor had talked about it's a muscle that you need to just make sure that you continually exercise. Yeah. And he also talked about, you mentioned about people using it for a Google search because that's the thing. It looks like a box. And so people just go in there and they just, ask it the same question they would ask Google. And it's like, this is totally different technology. So with regards to generative AI versus just searching.
Was it his idea in there or was it in a different book? But because it's a new mindset.
Yes.
People putting a little Post-it note, maybe it was his, on your computer or somewhere visible, how might AI assist with this? Because you don't think about it. It's, wait, why am I manually going through and replacing and editing this document in this way? Why wouldn't I use AI? You just don't think to do it. So yeah, it's a new way of thinking.
Yeah, for sure. No, I liked this course. I thought it was good. I'm glad you mentioned it. And I'll be sure that I put some links to this stuff that we talked about here in the liner notes for the show. Speaking of which, I guess 2 things. Before, I have you give them your contact information, stuff like that. Is there anything else that I missed? Anything else you wanted to focus in on that I maybe didn't touch on?
There's so many other things to talk about. Let's think what would be interesting. Can we riff on the tools thing that I was sharing? What's your take on that? And I would like to share my favorite tool right now by far is Claude. I've been using Claude for a long time. I've always bounced between them, but now it's my number one by far go-to. I love the way it writes. I love the way it creates documents. I'm using CoWork. That's the thing is I'm not a coder. I've been resistant to getting into Claude Code, but what you can do in CoWork is what you can do in code. And I've been having it do things for me within my desktop, doing really multi-step workflows that regular Claude chat couldn't do before. And I've been training it on all these skills and having it pull up and activate these skills that I've been teaching it has been super exciting for me. And so I'm curious your take on that.
That's where my head was going. Do we want to talk about agents and just this idea that AI is going to become beyond just little tasks, right? I think the breakthrough that more and more people are going to start to see, although I like to tell people you and I and others that have been in the field, I feel like we're on second base and heading to third when we're talking about agents and agentic workflows and building work, all the stuff you're talking about on your desktop. And the 99% of the population is what's a prompt? So you can't go too far into that, but that's where the industry is heading. That's the promise, right? Is that we are going to be able to spawn a number of different things that literally will run for hours while we're asleep It's going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff. And we're seeing some glimmers of that with a number of projects that are out there. There's a lot of open source ones out there as well, where, again, they spin together a number of different LLMs with tools, like you said, with various prompting skills. Skills is another big word that Claude invented. And basically now all these skills are used by a ton of the other providers out there as well. So the angle on that is yes, anything you can do to have a workflow. The tool that I like to use, and I'm using a lot now, is one called Gamma. It will create presentations for you. And I think there's like presenter.ai and all these other ones. But I have no design background. Whenever I would create presentations in PowerPoint, and PowerPoint had a designer, but they were all just bullet points and didn't really have any sort of look to it. And you could choose a theme or two. But so anyways, I really enjoy Gamma. I've been using Gamma for, I don't know, probably a year now, actually. It's been getting better and better. It's not perfect, but it can allow me to focus more on the content, and then it can start creating beautiful images around it, right? And some of it is AI generated, but it also, you can just pull them up just from online stock photos. Very easy. So for me, I love giving the presentations and getting all the data and bringing it together, but actually making it look nice that's been my Achilles heel. So this has worked out.
That's interesting that you say Gamma. I've jumped in and out of Gamma, and I've done the paid, and it might have gotten better recently, but I haven't loved it because I don't know if it was the image generator that I was activating. I'm like, this looks so something. I couldn't get it to look how I wanted and without too much editing.
Yeah. I will say, if you take it out of the box, it looks AI. Like, people can look at it and it's one of those signature things where you can look over all these presentations and be like, okay, Gamma, right?
Yeah. You can customize and do all the things in there. But here's what, if you haven't done yet, in NotebookLM, there's the generate the PowerPoint button, which is mind-blowingly good now. And the hack for that is you got to hit that little pencil button when you're going to make a presentation, and you can customize what that presentation is going to look like more. And I, compared to Gamma, have been very pleased with the PowerPoints it generates. The problem is you can't edit the text. So pro tip hack, if anyone out there wants to know, you export it as a PDF. You can import that into Canva as a PowerPoint, and then you can hit the magic editor in Canva and lift the text and edit the text, if that workflow makes sense. So I've been having fun with that lately.
That's cool. I have not done a side-by-side comparison. I will absolutely use that as a trial for my next presentation that I'm working on.
It might be kind of fun. Maybe I'll do this and you can put it in the notes. I can take our podcast transcript. I could put it into Canva and it could create a slideshow of this conversation. And it could be a detailed slide or just kind of like one that would be a presenter to talk from as visuals and that support. It might be kind of a fun way to capture this in a multimodal way. So I'll send that over to you. You can put it in there.
Cool. There's a couple tools out there that I have experimented around with that will take podcast audio and then snip out. It will basically create a 10-second snippet of various stuff and make it super easy to share out. So yeah, please, I will definitely check that out. But yeah, this is what this is all about. Yeah. It's basically sharing tools, because it's impossible to stay on top of it all, for sure.
It so is. All right. So this has been my new favorite tool. You can't see the video here, but it's called Plaud with a P, Plaud. Have we talked about this already?
We have, yeah. The last time we talked was before Christmas, and you were like, you should definitely check this out for the holidays. But yeah, why don't you inform the listeners about it?
Yeah. Plaud is an external recording device. In every single meeting, there's AI notes, right? But they're all scattered, right? What if you're in an in-person meeting? What if you're in Teams? What if you're in Google? What if you're in wherever the platform you're having a meeting? For me, this external device that lives on the back of my phone, I just press a button and it grabs a transcript. It's super accurate. Every time I run a training or an AI coaching session, I just have this. And that's what I've been learning with data is like when I have the data, part about Plaud that's really nice is it's HIPAA-compliant. So it's a little more safe compared to some of these other tools out there because you want to be careful with your data. But now I can take that transcript, it'll auto-generate executive summaries, and there's like 1,000 templates on there. You can actually make your own templates it'll make. But then now I can say, hey, here's our call for my exploratory call with a client. Let's draft a proposal. Okay, well, what did we talk about? All that goes into the context of the chat that I can basically do the thing that I was talking about in the meeting, right? So being able to leverage the data, and in this case, a transcript from a call or a training, and do something with it has been game changing for me. It's sped up so much of my creating and or confidence to be able to do something with all the different spaces that I'm in.
Now, whenever I go to a website, because they must be tracking me with the cookies, I see that thing. The other thing I was thinking about, though, after you told me about that, is like, how close are we just to having that be an app on your phone? I'm surprised that Apple hasn't just done this or Google hasn't done this as well.
I agree.
But I love the use case because you're right. You and I are having this conversation here right now. We are recording it, obviously, just for the podcast, but you can be on a million other calls. You can be in person, and it would love to have a microphone in the background, basically picking it up and then being able to do something with it. And one of the best use cases you talked about you touched on a little bit, was like proposals, right? Right now, I have a call with a prospect. They tell me about whatever they want to build, technology solution, whatever. We hop around a little bit, and then I'd actually have to either take, and it's one thing to have a transcript, but it's another thing where I basically have a template that I send out to clients with regards to sort of how the project's going to go. And I can take the transcript, give ChatGPT the template, load it up for me, and then I can actually then like bounce ideas off of it. What else am I missing? What else should I add to the proposal, right? So these things would take me hours in the past, and now I can do them in minutes.
Yeah, it's less of a bear. It's like, oh, I'll get to that next week. Now it's like, before our call, I got off an exploratory call with the client. I took the transcript, I put it into Claude. Claude has a skill. And when I say I teach it a skill, everyone, like if you're not building skills, you literally do a task or you describe the skill or the thing that you want it to be able to do. In this case, write proposals. Here's examples of how I write proposals. Here's my kind of a template that I follow. Okay, lock this in as a skill, save it to my skills. It walks you through it. Now I say draft a proposal. Here's a transcript. Here's other things I want to consider. It can already have kind of a set output that I'm aiming for. And I hit the ground running. That's so fun for me. Isn't that fun?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's a blast for sure. Well, yeah. So how do people reach out to you, Tyler? What's the best place to contact you?
Yeah. Whether it be LinkedIn, my website is amplifiedimpact.solutions. Happy to shoot me an email, tyler@amplifiedimpact.solutions. But yeah, if you're interested in getting training for your team or coaching and consulting on some projects that it's so fun for me, I'd love to have a conversation.
Awesome. Speaking of conversations, yeah, this was a fun conversation today. So yeah, I appreciate you taking the time and look forward to seeing you at future Applied AI conferences we have coming up. And yeah, we'll let people know about all the great things you're doing.
Same. Well, I was honored to be on here, Justin. I want to say this publicly, like I highly respect you, the way that you lead. I just feel like you lead by example. You're not doing it for ulterior motives. You can just see from my perspective, like the purity of it and just bringing people together to learn. I admire it, and I'm honored that you invited to have me on today to be able to have a conversation about this. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again. Yeah, very kind words. I appreciate it.
You've listened to another episode of the Conversations on Applied AI podcast. We hope you are eager to learn more about applying artificial intelligence and deep learning within your organization. You can visit us at appliedai.mn to keep up to date on our events and connect with our amazing community. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Justin at appliedai.mn if you are interested in participating in a future episode. Thank you for listening.